Welcome, friends, to the Deep Dive. This is where we take all that complex stuff you send us and basically turn it into knowledge you can use, tailor-made for you.
Yep, that's the mission. We're your guides, really. Cutting through the noise, finding those patterns, those aha moments, without you having to spend days reading, dense transcripts. Think of it as your shortcut.
And today, oh boy, we're jumping into a deep dive that's got this amazing mix, really profound metaphysical ideas, but also, surprisingly, personal, funny stuff. We are cracking open Session 14 of the Early Sessions, Book 1 of the Seth Material.
Right. This one was recorded Wednesday, January 8th, 1964.
And it is, like you said, a real mess.
It's a total roller coaster. I mean, we go from defining the universe itself, basically, to getting these really detailed psychological profiles of Jane's relatives. And all the while, Seth is making these incredibly funny, sort of pointed remarks about Joseph's work habits. Seriously, the vibe is, well, it shifts, it's relaxed, then it gets genuinely chilling, and then it's funny again, sometimes all in a few minutes. We're going to talk about the high cost of time and this pretty terrifying experience of physical weightlessness later on. So, yeah, brace yourself.
Okay, but before we really get into it, we have to make this clear. This deep dive, like everything we do, is going to be distributed completely free of charge. It's on all the major platforms, and it's purely for educational purposes. Okay.
Absolutely. So let's unpack Session 14. Where do we start?
Well, it kicks off right away. Joseph, who's taking the notes, asks Seth about something from the previous night. He wants a definition of feeling or, emotion.
Okay, pretty fundamental question, right?
Absolutely fundamental. And Seth's response is quick. He's like, yeah, emotion, feeling, same thing. But then, and this is so typical, Seth, he says, essentially, hold that thought. He'll give the full definition later.
Deferring. Why? Because he had something more pressing, apparently. A practical psychological thing he needed to address first. It was about Jane Ruburt, the medium, and specifically her family history.
Right. Okay. And that leads into this analysis of Jane's grandfather, Joseph Bourdeau, who had passed away.
Exactly. And the way Seth talks about him, it's more than just a quick spiritual check-in. It feels like a full entity path assessment, really detailed.
He describes him how?
He starts with high praise, actually, calls him part of a very strong entity, but then immediately the critique. He was extremely inarticulate in last life.
Inarticulate, meaning he just couldn't express himself.
Well, yeah, but Seth clarifies it wasn't about being dumb or lacking insight. It was more an inability to synthesize, to bring together and express the deep understanding he'd actually gained in previous lives. The knowledge was there, inside, but the channel outward was, blocked.
Okay, that makes sense. And Seth connects this to Jane's strong attachment to him when she was young.
Precisely. He suggests that Jane, being young and maybe psychically still quite close to a past life herself, she sensed that powerful inner awareness in him. Even though his outward personality couldn't really communicate it, she picked up on his psychic inclination, his true essence.
So he had this deep inner world.
Oh, absolutely. A profound connection to all that is, to nature. He felt this incredible unity with the cosmos. But here's the kicker, the tragic part, Seth points out. But to him, nature did not include his fellow human beings.
Wow. Okay, so connection to trees and stars, yes. People, no. That's quite a split.
It's everything, isn't it? He found his peace out there, but walled himself off from the messy, demanding world of human relationships.
And Seth sees that as a problem.
A big one. He calls that kind of isolation dangerous to any personality. Not just, sad or lonely, but actually dangerous to the structure of the personality functioning on this plane.
Unless... There's always a caveat, isn't there?
There is. Unless that isolation comes after the person has successfully achieved a full identification with the human race, you have to fully engage with humanity first, understand it, identify with it, before you can constructively withdraw. Otherwise, it's just avoidance.
Right. You can't skip the messy bits. You have to integrate it first.
Yeah.
It's like trying to graduate without taking the core classes.
Exactly. And you miss the necessary friction, the growth that comes from interaction.
And didn't Seth add a little bit of dark humor about the grandfather here, too? Something about his kids?
He did. It's quite revealing. Seth noted the grandfather never forgave his own children for growing up.
Ooh, that says a lot, doesn't it?
Speaks volumes about his resistance to change, right? He didn't want his kids evolving, moving on, because that meant leaving the little isolated world he'd built. His psychic nature kind of got twisted, used for exclusion instead of connection.
So Jane inherited this complex legacy. She got the wonderful connection to nature from him.
Yeah, Seth says she drank in his feeling of completeness with nature, a real gift.
But she also picked up traces of his closed attitude toward people. And Seth is clearly pointing this out as something both Jane and Joseph need to work on.
Absolutely. Which leads directly into the core practical advice of this session. You need disciplined relationships. Seth is very direct. He tells them external relationships yield richness for both of you that neither of you would get in any other manner. It's like an energetic requirement for growth here.
But he doesn't say they have to become like party animals, right?
Yeah.
Which must be a relief for people studying this who are maybe more introverted.
Totally. Seth is practical. He says, and I'm quoting here, you do not have to take hordes into your house. On the other hand, all stages of relationships are necessary. So even just small, structured, disciplined social interactions provide that essential contrast and richness.
Okay. And why do they avoid it? Seth diagnoses it as fear.
Yeah, specifically fear. Fear that opening up, letting people in would somehow threaten their really intense work habits and creative goals. They were so focused on the Seth material.
And Seth reassures them.
He does. He basically says, look, your work, your goals, they're strong enough. They can handle a bit of external contact. They won't fall apart.
And while giving this advice, Seth throws in another one of those funny, maybe slightly embarrassing personal observations, this time aimed at Joseph.
Oh, yeah, the contrast between past life Joseph and present Joseph. It's hilarious.
What does he say?
He says to Joseph, essentially, when you were worldly, meaning in a past life presumably, you were the fleshiest man I knew.
Huh, fleshiest?
Fleshiest, implying, indulgence, worldliness. Now, Seth continues, in your compensation, you show the same tenacity of purpose.
So extreme indulgence then, extreme discipline now. But the core drive, the tenacity is the same.
Exactly. It's a brilliant observation about human nature, how we swing between extremes, but that underlying willpower, that tenacity, stays constant. It's just applied differently.
And Seth's point is that Joseph's current sort of ascetic focus will actually become more valuable.
More precious and more constructive, Seth says, when contrasted with periods given to friends. It's the contrast itself that gives it meaning. You need the social interaction to fully appreciate the value of the focused solitude and vice versa, like needing darkness to see the light.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That focus on disciplined creation leads nicely into the next big topic, doesn't it? The metaphysics.
It does. It flows right from Joseph's own thoughts. He had apparently been doing some writing that morning about art, and Seth kicks off this section by praising them, calling them very good.
Joseph was thinking about creative expression.
Right, grappling with it. And Seth uses art as the perfect analogy to explain pure creation. He gives this core concept. Paintings are, wait for it, solidified feeling on board or paper.
Solidified feeling.
Right.
Art is basically crystallized emotion.
Exactly. And then Seth, being Seth, he immediately scales it up, way up. If a painting is solidified feeling,
Then the entire universe is too.
you got it. He says, so is the universe itself on your plane, physical, materialized feeling, only with more dimension than a drawing or a painting.
Wow. That's a huge concept. Physical reality isn't dead matter. It's conscious feeling that's taken form.
It's massive, a cornerstone of the Seth material, really. And the more dimension part implies the universe isn't static like a painting. It's self-generating, it has infinite layers of feeling and action built into its very structure.
But wait, if it's solidified, how can it still be dynamic? Seems like a contradiction.
Good question. Seth tackles that. He explains that even when feeling is captured or solidified in art, it still contains action. The lines, the forms, they hold the energy, the action that the artist caught and preserved.
Okay, so the action is sort of frozen within the form.
Kind of, but it's never truly static, because the moment someone looks at the artwork, that feeling gets reactivated. Seth says, feeling is again motion moving out from the painting into the beholder's perception. It's a constant fluid exchange.
Ah, so the observer completes the circuit, brings the solidified feeling back into motion.
Exactly. And then he throws in this little philosophical aside, almost humorously, that things like straight lines and curves, they're just human symbols, not fundamental realities in this fluid creation.
Okay. This whole idea of perception
Yeah.
that links to something specific Joseph drew, right? An ink sketch.
Yes, a sketch of a man who seemed trapped inside his own physical senses, trying desperately to reach or see beyond them.
And Seth uses this to explain the big paradox about our senses.
The ultimate paradox. Our earthy senses might feel like prison walls, limiting us to this narrow slice of reality. But, Seth says, they are simultaneously the only way we have on this plane to even glimpse beyond. The limitation is also the keyhole.
How does that work? How do the limits let us see past the limits?
It's about resonance, essentially. Seth says the perception of beauty may be visual beauty, like a sunset, but he emphasizes auditory beauty, like music, even more, that perception is the trigger on your plane for subsequent inner perceptions.
So experiencing external harmony, like beautiful music,
Mm-hmm.
it tunes our internal state somehow, opens a door.
That's the idea. It aligns something within us, resonates with our deeper self, and that resonance cracks open the gateway to inner awareness.
And this is where he introduces the concept of the inner senses.
Correct. He starts talking about senses within the senses. These are the tools we use to perceive and actually create our inner world, just like our physical senses perceive and create our shared external reality.
But he says they're limited too, right? Our physical senses are limited, and even the inner senses only perceive parts of the inner world. Why all the limits?
Survival, basically, and focus. Being functional on Earth requires this tight psychic focus, Seth calls it. Our consciousness is deliberately channeled along specific sensory lines.
And that focus necessarily blocks out, well, almost everything else.
Pretty much. Imagine if you could hear every frequency, see every dimension, perceive every thought all at once. You'd be overwhelmed, unable to function, unable to focus on just, crossing the street safely.
So not being able to constantly use our inner senses isn't a flaw, it's actually a feature, part of the design for living here.
Exactly. It's a necessary constraint for survival on this plane. And Seth makes the point that the inner senses really become available. You can start consciously using them only after your basic survival needs on the physical plane feel secure.
So once you feel safe and grounded.
Then you can afford to look around psychically, expand your awareness without completely destabilizing your physical life. It sort of suggests, maybe controversially, that spiritual exploration is a bit easier when the rent's paid and you feel fundamentally secure.
Okay, that security, that anchor in physical reality, it's so tied up with our concept of time, isn't it? Which brings us to the next really big mind-bending part of the session.
Oh yeah, the nature of time. This is where it gets really chewy, intellectually speaking. Seth points out that time is instantly involved in everything we do on the human plane because, simply put, no action is really simultaneous here.
Right. One thing happens, then the next. Action, reaction. There's always a duration.
Always. Our minds just can't grasp true simultaneity. And this leads Seth into this really critical comparison, how humans try to recapture the past versus how he experiences or interacts with time.
Okay, so how do humans do it? We look at old photos, watch old movies, listen to recordings.
Right. We use these physical, mechanical means to try and re-experience a past moment.
But Seth says there's a catch, a cost.
A huge cost. He points out that the very act of referring back is itself trapped in time. So if you spend 1 minute looking through an old photo album...
Therefore, 1 minute of such a past referral costs you 1 minute of present time.
Exactly. It's a one-to-one transaction. You pay a minute of now to get a minute of then. But, and this is the crucial part, Seth says, you end up shortchanged.
Shortchanged? Why? We saw the photo, didn't we?
You saw the image, the external facts, the clothes, the setting, but what's missing?
The feeling.
The feeling. The emotions, the aliveness, the actual vitality of the people in that moment. You can't access the joy they felt or the sudden realization someone had just off camera or the anxiety in the air. That whole felt dimension is gone because our physical senses can't retrieve that crystallized emotion across the boundary of linear time.
So every time we remember something using ordinary memory or look at a historical record, it's fundamentally incomplete. We're paying full price in present time for a partial product from the past.
It's a deficit model, exactly. We're always losing something in the transaction.
Okay, so how does Seth do it differently?
He says he can refer back to material, whether it's a past life detail or something from a previous session, without spending an equivalent amount of linear time. He uses time more like a vehicle, something he can navigate or use at leisure.
So for him, time isn't this rigid track we're stuck on. It's more flexible, something that can be manipulated.
That's the implication. It functions differently for consciousness operating outside our specific plane. Which brings us to the really deep stuff, the metaphysical definition of time itself.
Okay, buckle up. What is it?
Seth states that time basically has no meaning without the necessity to counteract against other actions. Or, put another way, without barriers.
So, time is friction, resistance. If everything just happened perfectly smoothly and simultaneously, there'd be no time.
That's the essence of it. Time arises from the gap between action and counteraction, the need for adjustment, the process of response. That process creates the duration we perceive as time.
This is complex.
Understatement. And Seth knows it. This is where he has that wonderful moment of self-aware frustration trying to explain this non-time concept to time-bound beings. He actually says, the sad part is that you probably won't be able to understand it. It all takes time.
Huh. The irony is perfect. You need time to understand something that exists outside of time. You're using words that are stuck in time.
It's an impossible communication challenge, really. He's doing his best, but acknowledges the inherent limits.
So how does he try to bridge that gap? He used an analogy, right? Something about wires.
Yeah, this is probably one of the most abstract concepts in the early sessions. He talks about imaginary wires of solidified vitality.
Okay, hold on. Solidified vitality. How can vitality, which is energy, life force, be solid? That seems completely contradictory.
It does, from our perspective, but I think the key is solidified. Seth seems to be suggesting that this fundamental vitality, this energy, is inherently fluid and dynamic. But when consciousness filters it through the lens of our physical plane, through our limited perception, it appears solid. Solidity is the illusion created by our specific frequency or focus.
So these wires are the basic stuff of reality, but they only look solid to us.
That seems to be the idea. And these apparently solid yet fundamentally fluid wires of vitality are what form the boundaries or structures of different planes of existence.
And when this fundamental substance passes into our plane, our reality,
it becomes subject to our local laws, like gravity and, crucially, like time.
So how does that create time?
Seth suggests that the constant motion within this seemingly solidified vitality, the internal action and counteraction happening at the very core of reality, that ongoing movement is what gives us the illusion of duration, of time passing. That inner dynamism is the time trigger.
Wow. Okay. My brain hurts a little.
Join the club. It's deep stuff. But he offers a bit of motivation for wrestling with it. He clearly states that studying time, trying to grasp its nature on our plane, will teach us a lot about the fifth dimension.
Now, we need to be clear here. When Seth says fifth dimension, he probably doesn't mean it like in science fiction, as another spatial direction, right?
Almost certainly not. In the Seth material, higher dimensions usually refer to non-linear realms of consciousness and existence, places or states where actions can be simultaneous, where past and future aren't necessarily sequential, but are perhaps accessible all at once.
So time, for Seth, is the vehicle he uses to interact with our sequential reality. By studying how time works here, we start to get clues about the structures of reality that operate differently.
Exactly. We're decoding our own operating system to understand the larger network, in a way.
Okay. Phew. Let's shift gears a bit, because the session itself takes a dramatic turn here, doesn't it? Not just in topic, but physically.
Oh, yeah. This is where the chilling vibe comes in, I think. Right in the middle of this dense philosophical discussion about time, something happens with Jaden's voice.
What did Joseph record?
He noted it became suddenly much deeper, significantly louder, more formal, and definitely masculine. He described it as the voice of a powerful, resonant lecturer. He even wrote that he was momentarily startled, had to consciously remind himself this booming voice was coming from Jane's relatively small frame.
But Jane herself wasn't bothered.
Apparently not. Completely unalarmed, deep in trance.
And this wasn't just random. Seth explained it later.
He did. He admitted it was an intentional experiment. He said he was in a playful, I might say frisky mood earlier and wanted to have some normal conversation. But he realized that the serious stuff, the deep philosophy about time and reality, cannot be given to you in a playful manner without undermining its weight or authority.
So he literally changed his energetic projection, his vocal output, to match the seriousness of the content.
Seems like it. It's a fascinating glimpse into the mechanics of channeling. He's modulating his energy, his persona, to fit the information being delivered. Deep physics requires the lecturer voice. Casual banter, something else.
And he clearly wanted that casual banter too. He wanted to connect on a more personal level.
Very much so. He stressed that he wants to be known as a personality in myself and as a friend. He talks about still having emotional ties, trying clumsily his word to make contact. There's a real sense of affection there.
He also gets some insight into emotions on his side, right? Playfulness versus anger.
Yeah, he says their sense of play and relaxation is actually much stronger than ours. Like a child's abandon, but with full adult consciousness. But anger. He says it seldom arises, not because they can't feel it, but because their self-discipline is so ingrained.
And that affection comes through really clearly sometimes. Didn't he say something about missing them?
He did. It's quite touching, really. He says, "I admit that I miss you occasionally between sessions, dear friends." It's such a human moment, cutting through all the high-level metaphysics. It really grounds their relationship as collaborators, as friends.
And this lighter, friendlier mood is probably why he keeps poking fun at Joseph, the note-taker.
Oh, absolutely. It's a running gag in this session. He repeatedly, playfully ribs Joseph for being so incredibly diligent, so focused on getting every word down. It connects back to that tenacity point earlier.
Right, it's like he's gently trying to loosen Joseph up a bit.
Exactly. Break the intensity. He jokes about ending the session early so Joseph's hand won't cramp, saying, "I regret the necessity to keep Joseph so occupied." And then later, he really lays it on thick. "You are the damnedest note-taker I ever saw, Joseph. You take the proverbial cake."
Huh. You can just hear the playful exasperation. It's the kind of teasing you only do with people you know well.
Totally. It's a friendly roast designed to break up that super tight, disciplined energy Joseph brought, reminding him maybe to integrate the spontaneous, relaxed side, too.
And Seth explicitly said the voice change itself was part of this wanting more personality to come through.
Yes. He wanted to enhance the immediacy, make the connection feel more direct, allow more of his specific personality to register, rather than sounding like, and this is his amazing phrase, an asexual eunuch.
Wow. Okay, that tells you a lot about how he wanted to be perceived. Definitely not as some vague, ethereal mist.
Not at all. He wanted to come across as fully dimensional, humorous, even masculine.
And this more immediate connection allowed for some really quick, almost risky comments about their past lives, too.
Lightning fast. He just throws them out there. That Joseph was exceedingly lecherous in Denmark in a past life, quite the contrast to his current disciplined self.
And Jane didn't escape either.
Nope. He joked she was so vain as a woman in one life, she'd put her current self to shame. These weren't just random insults. They felt like quick, confirming snapshots of personality traits or patterns they were still working with.
He also mentioned someone else coming through sometimes. Frank Watts.
Yeah, this was interesting and a bit chilling, maybe. He casually refers to old Frank Watts, another personality or energy presence that sometimes bleeds through. And Seth says, "I've not assimilated him completely, but you can believe me, I intend to."
Assimilated. Okay, that gives you a glimpse into Seth's own complexity. He's not just one single thing.
Apparently not. He seems to be this vast composite entity, constantly integrating different aspects or even other personalities. And Frank Watts is one he's still working on fully integrating or perhaps dominating within the channel. The determination there is quite strong.
Wow. Okay. So after all this intensity and humor, how does the session end?
Seth basically throws in the towel because of Joseph's sheer note-taking stamina. He ends the session, which had gone on quite long, out of utter mercy for Joseph's hand, adding with the final touch of humor that he had really enjoyed myself at your expense.
A perfect ending, really. Playful dominance right to the last word.
Exact.
But the story doesn't quite end there, does it?
Yeah.
Something significant happened a couple of days after this intense session.
Right. This shifts from the sometimes funny, sometimes intense session itself to something genuinely unnerving that happened to Jane on January 10th, 2 days later. It really highlights the physical side effects or maybe dangers of this deep channeled work.
What happened? She went into some kind of trance.
A very deep, self-induced trance state, yeah. It lasted about 3 hours. Apparently, she'd been trying some crystal gazing and talking about dissociation and somehow triggered this really powerful, uncontrolled state.
And the symptoms were strange.
Extremely strange and contradictory. On the one hand, intense drowsiness. Her head was slumped, eyelids heavy like she was deeply asleep. But at the same time, her physical senses were extremely acute. She could hear tiny sounds, see minute details across the room with incredible clarity.
Drowsy but hyper-aware. Weird. But the main thing was the physical feeling.
That was the most disruptive part. Profound weightlessness. She was conscious, knew where she was, but felt absolutely no muscle weight or pressure. She described her own arms and hands feeling like water or air.
Like she wasn't solid.
Exactly. She said she didn't feel physical enough to move. Getting out of the chair was apparently incredibly difficult because she'd lost that basic sensation of having mass, of having something to push against gravity with.
And her movements were affected.
Hugely. Joseph observed her movements were painfully slow, like a motion picture played slow, because she simply couldn't generate normal physical force.
There was an example with a coffee cup.
Yeah, imagine trying to lift a regular coffee cup, but feeling like your hand is just passing through air, offering no resistance. That's how she described it. She could barely lift it. The cup felt immensely heavy because her own body felt like it had no weight or substance to counteract it. The normal laws of physics felt suspended for her consciousness during those 3 hours.
That's profoundly disorienting. Did Joseph try to get her to do anything to anchor her?
He had her try to write, thinking the physical task might help ground her. The results were immediate and, frankly, alarming.
Her handwriting changed.
Dramatically. It became wavery, extremely small, and crucially, it lacked any normal pressure on the paper. And the things she managed to write, the prose itself, was described as childish, in fact.
Why the lack of treasure?
It's direct physical evidence of that detached psychic focus Seth talked about earlier. Her consciousness just wasn't sending enough energy, enough vitality to her arm muscles to exert the physical force needed for normal writing. She wasn't inhabiting her body fully.
And the content of the writing was odd, too.
Bizarre and fragmented, like little snippets from somewhere else entirely. References to names like Jerry and Mary, a musical term for Tizimo Allegro, and this incredibly specific time-place coordinate. 1913, May, 8 p.m. in your city corner of 6th and blank. The street name trailed off.
Wow. Like tuning into random radio signals. Or past life fragments bleeding through.
Could be. It strongly suggests a momentary dip into maybe another identity's memory or some other stream of consciousness, bypassing her usual mental filters because of the deep dissociation.
How did she finally snap out of it? Was it gradual?
Not exactly. Joseph asked her to try making a rapid, decisive movement to force the issue. She had to summon this incredible, almost violent effort of will to impose control back onto her weightless feeling body.
And what happened when she did?
The result wasn't smooth. It was jerky and uncontrolled. Her hand would suddenly fly up head high, then just as suddenly, bang the cup back down on the counter. It was like her consciousness crashing back into the driver's seat, overcorrecting violently. A real demonstration of the energy needed to re-anchor in physical reality after such a detachment.
So her mind was hyperacute, perceiving tiny details, but her body was almost non-functional. That contrast is amazing.
It powerfully illustrates Seth's point about psychic focus, doesn't it? When that focus shifts away from the basic requirements of physical plane survival, the body literally stops obeying those physical laws in the same way.
The whole episode sounds like a really chilling first-hand look at what happens when you loosen that anchor too much.
Exactly. It shows that reality is more elastic than we think, but playing with that elasticity, letting go of the physical focus, comes with real, tangible, and potentially risky physical consequences.
So session 14, it really covers the gamut, doesn't it? From psychology to deep metaphysics, humor, and then this quite unsettling physical after effect.
It's a masterclass in the complexity of this whole phenomenon. We started with that psychological deep dive on the grandfather, moved through the universe as solidified feeling, wrestled with the high cost of human time referral,
Got entertained by Seth's very distinct personality and humor.
and then ended with this fascinating, almost terrifying account of Jane's weightless somnambulism, a powerful reminder of the physical mechanics involved.
Key takeaways for you, the listener. The universe as conscious, materialized feeling. Our way of looking back in time is inherently flawed and costly. Seth's personality is complex, friendly, and humorous.
And maybe most dramatically, that physical grounding, that psychic focus, is essential for normal functioning here. And letting it go, while potentially opening other perceptions, has profound physical effects.
We really encourage you to explore the source material for yourself. Study the Seth Material books, especially the early sessions, book 1, to get the full picture, all the nuances.
Absolutely. You can find the books and learn more by visiting the publisher New Awareness Network. Their website and bookstore is at https://sethcenter.com, the-early sessions. Check it out.
And of course, we credit the Seth Material and New Awareness Network for preserving and publishing these incredible sessions.
Okay, so maybe one final thought to leave you with, something to chew on. This session hammered home the importance of disciplined relationships in physical life. Isolation, like the grandfather's, was called dangerous.
Right, but then Jane, in her dissociated, weightless state, a state of profound isolation from normal physical connection, achieved this incredibly acute perception and maybe a different kind of connection.
So here's the paradox to ponder. If our physical senses and our necessary anchor in the body limit us to this sequential, time-bound reality, what essential aspect of true relationship, maybe the kind that exists beyond time and space, are we potentially blocking out just by staying fully grounded here, by prioritizing only the physical connection?
Is there a deeper form of connection that requires loosening that physical grip, maybe in ways explored by mystics or even in states like Jane experienced, however unstable? Something to think about.
Definitely something to think about until our next deep dive.